The streets of downtown Kingston beat with sound systems. Old buses rattling, vendors shouting, and the sweet, sticky smell of jerked chicken smoke curling into the night. For Shani, that chaos was comfort. At 23, she lived fast. Louder than the speakers by Coronation Market. Wilder than the bikes that skidded down Spanish Town Road at midnight. She was the girl with the short skirts, the high laugh, and the habit of slipping into dances where trouble always seemed to find her. Men came and went like cheap rum shots. Quick burn, no satisfaction. She liked it that way. No promises, no chains. Just movement, heat, and forgetting. Tonight was no different. The dance kept throbbing at Raytown, the bass making the zinc fences tremble. Shani was at the center, waistline rolling like fire, sweat glistening on her skin under the colored lights. She loved the way eyes followed her, the way men leaned close with hungry stares. But when she stepped outside for a breath of air, the city seemed to pause. Across the street, leaning against a battered taxi, a man was watching her. Not like the others, no licking of lips, no rude whistles. His eyes held steady, calm, as if he was studying her soul beneath the glitter and recklessness. Shani scoffed, flicking her braids back.
"What you look pon, boss man?"
She called, a smirk dancing on her lips. The man only smiled faintly, slow and sure.
Somebody who danced like she trying to drown out pain.
The words cut sharper than she expected. For a second, Shani's grin faltered. Then she rolled her eyes and strutted off toward the bar, heart beating a little too fast. She didn't know him, didn't even ask his name. But something about that calm gaze followed her all night, long after the music swallowed her again. And for the first time in a long while, Shani felt seen. The following weekend, downtown lit up again. It was payday, Friday, and the sound system strung up by Tivoli Gardens promised vibes till sunrise. Shani had on her tight red dress, the kind that turned heads the moment she stepped through the crowd. She was halfway to the bar when she felt it, that steady gaze again. She spun, and there he was. Same calm stance, same quiet presence. Only this time, he stepped closer.
"You following me?"
She teased, one eyebrow arched. He chuckled, deep and low.
Downtown small. Maybe a you will follow me.
She liked the way his voice carried firm, but not loud. Not pushy like the rest. His shirt was simple, clean white against his dark skin, his shoulders broad, his eyes sharp.
My name is Moreland,
he said, stretching out a hand. Shani tilted her head, pretending to think.
"Shani,"
she said at last, slipping her palm into his. His hand was warm, steady, too steady. They stood there longer than she meant to, caught in the heat of a touch that wasn't even supposed to matter. She pulled away first, sipping her drink to cool herself.
So what a nice empress like you do with your nights,
Marlon asked, leaning close, but never too close. She smirked.
"Live reckless, take chances, enjoy life."
And what in morning time? When the dance done and the crowd gone.
She didn't answer right away. Nobody ever asked her about morning. She was the night pure and raw. But he was looking at her like he wanted more than just the girl in the red dress. Marlon's eyes lingered on her, slow and sure.
You don't tired as yet?
He asked softly. Shani swallowed. For the first time, she couldn't find a quick comeback. Something inside her stirred a question she wasn't ready to face. The bass kicked back in, and the dance erupted. But between the rhythm and the sweat, Shani felt a pull stronger than music, a pull toward him. Days turned into weeks, and Shani kept bumping into Marlin. Sometimes at Raytown, sometimes near Coronation Market, sometimes just walking down Spanish Town Road like fate was playing tricks on her. He never chased her, never pressured, just stood steady, a rock in the whirlwind of her reckless nights. And the more she saw him, the more unsettled she felt. One humid evening, after a long dance, Shani found herself outside with him again. The air was thick with jerk smoke, reggae bleeding from every corner. She leaned on a wall, sipping a red stripe, eyes on him.
So what really is your game, Marlin? You watch me like me a project.
Me don't have no game, Shani. I just like the way you make noise in the night. But I also wonder how you sound when you quiet.
Her breath hitched. Nobody ever wanted her quiet. Men wanted her body, her laughter, her madness. But he wanted something else. She laughed nervously.
Me no quiet. Trust me. You really don't want to know.
Everybody quiet sometimes,
he said, eyes locked on hers. The crowd pressed past them, but in that moment, it felt like they were alone. The air between them grew heavy, charged. Shani's skin tingled as his hand brushed hers, slow, deliberate. She should have pulled away. That was the rule. No strings, no ties. But instead she let his fingers linger, warmth spreading up her arm like fire.
Careful, Marlin. I'm dangerous.
He leaned in, his breath brushing her ear.
but dangerous, sweet too, baby.
Her knees weakened. She wanted to kiss him right there, lose herself in that steady strength. But fear twisted inside her chest. He wasn't like the others. With Marlin, it wouldn't just be heat. It would mean giving up the armor she wore every night. Downtown Kingston pulsed with heat and sweat, and Shani was in the middle of it again, body moving to the beat, like she was born from it. But this time, Marlin was there too. Not watching from afar, he was right behind her, close enough for her to feel the warmth of his chest, steady against her back. She froze for a second, her waistline slowing. Normally, she'd push a man off, laugh, move away. But Marlin didn't grab or grind. He just matched her rhythm, hands hovering like he was asking permission instead of taking it. Shani tilted her head back, catching his eyes in the dim light. Something flickered their heat, patience, a hunger wrapped in control. Her breath caught.
You sure you can keep up?
She teased, voice husky from the music. His lips curved.
Try me.
And so she moved slow, rolling, testing him. He stayed with her, every step, every sway, never rushing, never demanding. The crowd screamed. The selectors hyped the tune. But for Shani, the world narrowed down to the man holding her without holding her, touching her without touching. When the song switched to a lover's rock rhythm, the energy shifted. Softer, deeper. Marlin finally rested his hand against her waist, firm but gentle, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she melted into him, her back against his chest, her body suddenly betraying how much she wanted this. His breath brushed her ear.
See it there, quiet.
Her pulse thundered. She wanted to deny it, but he was right. In the middle of the wild chaos, she was still, safe, seen. The dance roared around them, but Shani barely heard it. She turned, face inches from his. The music swelled, her heart raced, and before she could stop herself, she kissed him. It wasn't like her usual reckless kisses, fast and careless. This one was slow, burning, the kind that tasted like danger and promise all at once. When she finally pulled back, breathless, Marlin's hand cupped her cheek, eyes steady.
I tell you already, dangerous can be sweet.
And for the first time in her wild life, Shani didn't feel like running. Weeks slipped by, and Shani noticed something strange. Her nights weren't the same. The dances still called, the streets still pulsed, but her wild hunger for them was fading, because more and more her mind wandered to Marlin. Sometimes they'd sit by the waterfront, legs dangling over the edge, talking about their childhood and past experiences. Other days, they'd walk through Parade to shop, then have lunch together at KFC and Burger King. And in the nights, they are glued to their phones, talking to each other for hours until they fall asleep. It wasn't that she stopped being reckless overnight. Her spirit was still fire. But with Marlin, the fire didn't have to burn her out. He made space for her laughter, her stubbornness, her edge. He saw her chaos and never flinched. One evening, after a long walk, he brought her to his small yard on the edge of downtown. The zinc fence rattled in the breeze, and the scent of mangoes lingered in the air. Shani leaned against the doorway, teasing.
So, this is the famous hideout?
He smiled.
Hideout? No, this is home. You're welcome here, Shani.
Her chest tightened. Home. It wasn't a word she was used to. Inside they sat close. The hum of crickets outside. The world quiet for once. His hand found hers, fingers interlocking like it was the most natural thing.
Shani,
He said softly.
you don't have to live to please the knights. You deserve more than the crowd and the noise.
She studied him, her throat thick.
And if I don't know how to want more?
He leaned in, brushing his lips against her forehead. Then her cheek, slow and reverent.
Then I'll teach you.
Her body melted against his, not in the reckless way she used to crave, but in a deeper surrender, one that scared her and soothed her all at once. His kisses trailed like a promise, each one steady, unhurried, filled with care. But surprisingly, Marlin stopped and cuddled with her until they both fall asleep. Marlin held her as if she was precious, not just beautiful. He didn't crave her body like the rest. He craved her. The following morning, Shani woke in the same position they slept. She woke Marlin and told him she was ready to leave, but he begged her to stay for breakfast instead. Shani has never experienced this feeling before. And in that small downtown yard, Shani realized the wild girl who lived only for the night had finally found something worth slowing down for. Not just a man, not just a lover, but peace. They started a beautiful relationship from that morning. Shani lived a better life after that. She felt like a new person. A year later, Marlin asked Shani to marry him. They got married months after, and Shani never went to another party. And she never regretted her decision. Every morning she sat in the back of his taxi, and every morning Andre fell in love a little more. It wasn't the kind of love he could explain to his friends at the taxi stand. To them, she was just another passenger, quiet, ordinary, blending into the morning rush like everybody else. But to Andre, she was different. From the first day she slipped into his back seat, head bent over her phone, earphones in, he felt something stir inside him, a kind of pull. Andre drove the May Pen to Old Harbor Route, a job he'd been doing for 2 years now. The mornings were always the same. Passengers grumbling about the fare, school children shouting jokes, vendors calling out from the roadside, "Donuts, donuts, Patty Pond's sale." But on the days she came into his taxi, the chaos felt quieter, as if the whole play melted into the background. She never said much, just "Good morning, driver," in a soft voice that Andre swore he could recognize anywhere. Sometimes she had a book in her hand, sometimes just her phone. She never chatted with other passengers, never got caught up in the loud conversations about politics, dancehall beef, or TikTok drama. She was in her own little world. Andre wished he could be part of that world. But every time he thought about saying something as simple as, "What's your name?" his throat closed up. What if she thought he was just another taxi man trying to harass her? What if she stopped taking his route altogether? He couldn't risk it, so he kept his words locked inside, driving and hoping day after day. This morning, though, was different. He spotted her walking toward the stand, sunlight bouncing off her skin, tote bag neatly tucked under her arm. Andre's heart kicked in his chest. She was coming, like always. But then another man appeared, tall, confident, with a grin that looked a little too familiar with her. He stepped into the taxi right after her and slid into the seat beside her, leaning back like he owned the place. "Susan?" the man exclaimed. Andre's hands froze on the steering wheel. Susan! That was her name. He repeated it in his mind like a secret song. "Susan, Susan, Susan." She looked up, startled, then broke into a wide smile. "Darren, I can't believe it's really you. From high school days, I don't see you. What you doing back in Jamaica?" Andre's stomach sank. High school? Old friends? That kind of laugh they shared wasn't just friendly, it was full of memories. "I just came back from foreign," Darren said, his voice smooth. "Couldn't stay away from yard too long." Andre started the engine, but his mind was racing. Darren was a foreigner. That already gave him an advantage. Girls loved a man who came back from overseas, dressed nice and smelling like expensive cologne. Andre suddenly became painfully aware of the sweat clinging to his shirt collar, the wear on his taxi seats, the honking horns pressing him to move faster. As the taxi pulled out, the conversations inside picked up. Two ladies in the back argued about the high price of yam and tomato in the market. A schoolboy begged his friend for some of his lunch money. The old lady in the front muttered under her breath about the heat and the lack of AC. But all Andre could hear was Susan's laughter. He stole a glance through the rearview mirror. Darren was leaning in, telling her stories from abroad. Susan's eyes sparkled, her shoulders brushed against his, and she didn't pull away. Andre's chest tightened. He'd spent months hoping for just one real conversation with her. And now, this stranger. No, this old flame was stealing her attention in a single ride. At the 19 Miles bus stop, the 7-seater taxi filled up even more. A vendor leaned in through the window, trying to sell fresh water fish. Someone complained about the music Andre was playing, so he turned the volume down. Through it all, Darren kept talking, and Susan kept listening. Andre gripped the steering wheel tighter. He wanted to interrupt, to say something, anything. But what? "Susan, you like dance hall?" No, that sounded foolish. "Susan, I see you every morning?" That sounded like stalking. So he stayed silent, his jaw clenched, while his heart beat louder than the taxi's engine. By the time they reached Old Harbor, most passengers had gotten off at Freetown and Avery Housing Scheme. Only Susan, Darren, and one elderly woman remained. Andre's palms were sweating. Maybe this was his last chance. Maybe he should just say something before she left. Susan dug into her bag and pulled out her fare. She handed it to Andre with that same gentle smile. "Thank you, driver." Her voice was sweet, but it cut through him like a knife. That was all she'd ever say to him. But before Andre reply or even take the money, Darren said, "No, keep your money, Sue. I will pay your fare," and handed Andre a $5,000 note. Susan giggled and accepted while putting back her money in her bag. Darren told Andre to keep the change, but Andre didn't even realize that the change can cover an entire trip. He didn't respond. All he could hear was Darren telling Susan that he will walk her to the office. Susan laughed, nodding as they both walked towards Gateway Plaza. Andre's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Through the window, he watched Darren place his hand on Susan's arm as they disappeared Andre wondered if he had lost her before he even had the courage to try. But what Andre didn't know was that this morning's ride was only the beginning, and destiny wasn't finished with him yet. Andre couldn't focus for the rest of that morning. He drove back and forth on his route, picking up passengers, dropping them off. But his mind wasn't on the traffic. It was on Susan and Darren. Every time he glanced at his rearview mirror, he imagined them laughing together, walking side by side through downtown, catching up on old times. "I just can't believe," Andre muttered under his breath, slamming the horn at a careless cyclist. "I am so stupid. I should have spoken to her long time." That night, Andre parked his taxi and sat staring at the dashboard long after the engine cooled. His brothers were reasoning at his gate, talking about football and politics. But Andre barely heard them. One of them called out, "Driver Dre, what happened to you? You look like you lose the lotto." Andre forced a laugh, but inside, the words hurt. He had lost something he never had. The next morning, Andre told himself he wouldn't expect Susan to appear. Maybe she'd take another taxi. Maybe Darren would pick her up himself. A lot of things were going through his mind. But when he pulled up at May Pen, there she was, Susan. Tote bag, earphones, same soft smile. Andre's heart jumped, but his relief quickly faded when Darren appeared again, right behind her. "Morning, driver," said Susan, handing him her fare up front. Darren gave a nod, sliding in beside her with a cocky grin. Andre clenched his jaw and started the engine. The ride was almost identical to yesterday. Chatter, laughter, and Andre's silence. Except this time, he noticed something new. Susan wasn't laughing quite as freely. Darren leaned in, talking a little too close, his arm brushing hers too often. She gave polite smiles, but her eyes flickered to the window, avoiding his gaze. Andre's chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't jealousy, it was anger. Darren was trying too hard, crowding her space. Couldn't he see she wasn't comfortable? At Freetown, traffic stalled. Vendors shouted, horns blared, and the taxi rocked with noise. Darren leaned in even closer. "Susan, I have a little link on the North Coast. I want to carry you on a weekend trip, just you and me. Old time's sake." Susan shifted in her seat, her fingers tightening around her tote bag. She forced a smile, but didn't answer. Andre's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight, he wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in his throat. Then, as if by fate, an elderly man sitting beside Susan spoke up. "Boy," he said sharply, eyeing Darren, "you don't see the young lady not interested? Leave her alone, man." The taxi went silent. Susan's cheeks flushed pink. Darren sat back with a forced laugh, and Andre felt a surge of gratitude toward the old man. When they reached Old Harbor, Susan hesitated before stepping out. She turned to look at Andre. For the first time, she looked him directly in the eyes. "Thank you, driver," she said. But this time, her voice carried more weight, more meaning. Andre swallowed hard. He nodded, but before he could speak, Darren jumped in again. "Come, Susan, let me walk you to the office." They stepped out together, disappearing into the crowd once more. Andre sat frozen behind the wheel. Something had changed. He wasn't imagining it. Susan's glance, her hesitation. She had noticed him. That night, Andre replayed the moment over and over in his head. Her eyes. The pause in her voice. The way Darren's presence made her uncomfortable. By the next morning, Andre had made a decision. If destiny was giving him a chance, he wouldn't waste it again. He pulled up to the May Pen stand earlier than usual, parking right at the spot where he knew Susan would pass. When she appeared, Andre's heart raced. She wore a light blue blouse this time. her hair well curly. The taxi was empty, and Darren wasn't in sight, and for a split second, Andre thought he'd finally have her alone in his taxi. But just as she reached the door, a familiar voice called out, "Susan, wait up!" Darren jogged toward her, smiling wide. Andre's stomach dropped, but Susan did something unexpected. She glanced at Darren and snapped, her voice shaking with anger. "Will you just leave me alone? For Christ's sake!" Both Andre and Darren froze, stunned. They had never seen this side of her before. She turned around, eyes blazing, and screamed loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Stop stalk me, Darren. I will travel with my coworker from now on." Then, without another word, Susan stormed off into the crowd, her tote bag swinging at her side. Darren stood there, red-faced and embarrassed, his cocky grin completely gone. With nothing else to say, he turned and walked away in silence. Andre sat behind the wheel, heart pounding. For a moment, he thought Susan might look back, might turn toward him, but she didn't. Instead, Andre felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. Disappointment cut deeper than he expected. Without picking up another passenger, he pulled away from the stand and drove straight home. Parking the taxi in his yard, Andre sat in silence. He knew he wouldn't be able to function that day, so he decided to take the day off the road. And when he finally let himself breathe, the tears came. Andre pressed his palms to his face, confused and hurting. He didn't even know why he was crying, but the pain was real. A week passed. 7 long days since Susan stormed off at Old Harbor. 7 days since Andre sat in his taxi, with tears streaming down his face, unsure why the pain cut so deep. He had tried to bury himself in work, driving extra hours, blasting music to drown out his thoughts. But every passenger who entered his taxi reminded him of her. The way she tucked her bag on her lap. The way her morning driver softened the hardest days. He missed it more than he cared to admit. Then, the next Monday morning, fate intervened. As Andre pulled up at the stand, there she was, Susan, his breath caught in his chest. She looked calmer this time, her tote bag in place, earphones dangling in her hand. No Darren in sight, just her. For a moment, Andre considered driving away. The ache in his chest was still fresh. But then Susan turned and met his eyes. She offered a small, tentative smile. "Morning, driver," she said softly, stepping into the taxi. Andre's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He nodded, forcing his voice steady. "Morning." The ride was quiet for a while. Passengers chatted around them, but Susan didn't put in her earphones. Instead, she glanced at him through the mirror, as if she was working up the courage to speak. Finally, she leaned forward, touching Andre's hand softly. Andre's heart literally stopped beating for a few seconds. "Driver, I am so sorry about last week," she said quietly. "I know it must have looked real dramatic." Andre swallowed, caught his breath, then said, "No worry about that, man. I saw the everything Irie." She gave a small laugh. "Truth is, I just wanted Darren to back off. Him too persistent, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I just ride with my coworker last week to ditch him." Andre's heart skipped a beat. He thought this was the perfect moment to open up. "Susan, who wouldn't want you?" said Andre, then covering his mouth, shocked because of what just came out of it. Susan's eyes widened. "What did you just say, driver?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "A long time me like you off, but couldn't find the courage to tell you." Susan closed her eyes, then blushed a little. "Wait until you let off the other passengers, then you talk to me." Those words were like music to Andre's ears. They were at Sandy Bay when he heard the magic words. He started driving fast like never before, taking just 7 minutes to reach Old Harbor from there. He rushed the passengers and collected the fares in a hurry, leaving Susan alone in the back seat. "Babes, can we go somewhere more quiet?" "You start call me all babes?" Susan asked. Andre smiled and said, "Think of babes I want to call you? I want to call you more than that." They both laughed. Then Susan reminded Andre that she should reach work by 10 a.m. "It's just 8:30, so you have time, babes. Just relax," said Andre. She agreed and reclined in the seat. Then Andre felt a slight erection. He wondered if he was dreaming. He drove onto Darlington Drive and then pulled up in a lonely lane. "Babes, come round here beside me. I need to look into your eyes when I say this." Susan hesitated a bit, then told Andre that she didn't want anyone to see her. He told her that she didn't have to get out the car and instructed her to step over. Susan did just that. She sat on the front seat and they both stared each other in the eyes for about 3 minutes. Susan then broke the silence saying, "So, driver, from when you like me?" Andre wanted to speak, but the words weren't coming. He smiled and looked away. "Don't be shy," Susan said. Andre hesitated a bit, then confessed his long-lasting obsession. Susan held his hand and said, "Well, I realized I liked you when I was traveling with my coworker. I couldn't stop thinking about you, and I knew I had to start taking your taxi again." Andre was speechless. His erection grew and he didn't know what to do. She realized what was happening, and what she said next was crazy. "I want you to," she said. Andre froze. He thought he would faint, but he just sat there speechless, eyes wide open. "But we can't be together," said Susan in a concerned tone. Andre managed to ask why, but what she said next would change his life. "I am engaged to be wed next month. I don't wear my engagement ring because it's bigger than my finger and is now being fixed, and my fiancé is a soldier." Andre's jaw dropped. He didn't know how to react. He was feeling sad, heartbroken, and betrayed. His erection suddenly left. Silence filled the car. Then Andre finally asked, "So why did you lead me on?" Susan then told him that she just wanted one special moment with him so she could keep that memory forever. The words hit Andre like a blow. Tears filled his eyes, but he fought hard to keep them from rolling down his face. He couldn't find any words. All he could do was start the engine and started driving. He kept his eyes on the road, trying to mask the storm inside him. A soldier, a fiancé, a wedding. The fact that she even went with him. Andre was so confused. Susan glanced at Andre. "I hope you understand," she said. Andre forced a smile and say, "I overstand." Susan exhaled in relief. "Thanks. I appreciate you, driver. You drive good and I feel safe, comfortable. I will always drive with you, but please promise me, from now on, we have to keep our feelings to ourselves. Okay?" Andre nodded slowly. "All right, Susan." They fell into silence again. This time, it wasn't heavy, it was bittersweet. Susan looked out the window, lost in thought, while Andre gripped the steering wheel, his chest aching with words he knew he could never say. When they reached back at Gateway Plaza, Susan paid her fare and paused. For once, she didn't rush out. She looked Andre straight in the eyes. "Take care of yourself, driver," she said softly. "See you tomorrow." Andre nodded. "Yeah, see you tomorrow." As she walked away, Andre let out a long, shaky breath. His heart ached, but there was a strange peace in it. He had spoken to her. She had noticed him. She even liked him herself. And since Susan could never be his, Andre knew that some loves weren't meant to be, only cherished. The taxi horn blared behind him, pulling him back to reality. Andre shifted into gear, joining the tide of the Old Harbor traffic once more. Life rolled on, And so would he. But in his heart, he carried the love of a man who once found his reason to smile in the back seat of his taxi. What happens when the pastor's only son falls for the one woman he was never supposed to touch? In the quiet district of Mount Zion in Montego Bay, Sunday mornings are sacred for churchgoers. Their church stands on the hill like a promise. White walls, blue shutters, and gossip hidden beneath every hallelujah. And this Sunday, the promise was about to break. Amanda Morris adjusted her cream-colored dress as she hurried along the narrow path. She has just been appointed the new choir leader. Young, beautiful, ambitious. Everyone said Pastor Grant made a fine choice. Everyone except his son. Steve Grant had been gone 2 years. Kingston college boy, fast car, big talk. But now he was back, sent home to find himself. The problem was, what he found that morning was Amanda.
"Girl, did you hear that the pastor's son come back from town?"
said Trudy, Amanda's best friend since childhood. Amanda smiled.
"So I heard, but what that have to do with me?"
"Everything. Sister Myra say him change me, dear. Tall, neat, and dangerous."
And dangerous he was. When Steve stepped through the church doors, sunlight caught the edge of his black jacket. He wasn't smiling, but every woman in the choir suddenly missed their note. Amanda felt it too. Something she couldn't name. Maybe curiosity? Maybe trouble. Steve's father, Pastor Grant, is a very stern leader and is always on point. He doesn't accept mistakes and gives good advice. Most believers fear him, but Amanda adores him.
Brethren, remember, next week's anniversary service must lift the roof. Amanda, lead them in the new chorus.
"Sure, I will, Pastor."
Her voice filled the room, soft but strong. Steve leaned on the doorframe, eyes fixed on her. When the last note faded, he clapped once.
Didn't know Mount Zion had a voice like that.
"Thank you, Brother Steve, right?"
Just Steve. Brother make me sound like I am leading one of Daddy's sermons.
She laughed and didn't even know why, because that was not funny. That was the first crack in her guard. After rehearsal, the rain came down sudden and heavy. The congregation scattered for shelter. Amanda waited by the church steps, clutching her songbook. Steve pulled up in his father's car.
You can't walk home in this. Come, I'll drop you home.
"No, it's fine. I'll wait it out."
Suit yourself. But in this community, people talk even when you do nothing. Might as well give them something nice to talk about.
She hesitated. Then the lightning cracked, and she slid into the passenger seat. The smell of rain and new temptation filled the air.
So, choir leader, you plan to save Mount Zion with music?
"I plan to do my part, same like everybody else."
This church love rules more than people. And Daddy, he'll love you as long as you stay perfect. The moment you slip...
He didn't finish the sentence, but his eyes did. Amanda turned to the window, watching raindrops race down the glass as low dance hall music played on the car radio. She wasn't sure if she felt insulted or seen. The ride home wasn't long, but to Amanda, it felt like forever.
"Thanks for the ride."
Anytime. But next time, don't wait for the rain.
She stepped out, heart unsteady. She ran to her veranda, but couldn't open her door. She had to wait for a while to catch her breath. From the house next door, Sister Myra peered through her curtain like judgment itself. By evening, the whole district would know Amanda rode with the pastor's son. That night, Pastor Grant sat at his desk, reading the book of Proverbs. He didn't look up when Steve entered.
You were seen giving Miss Morris a ride home.
Yes, Pastor. She would have drenched otherwise.
Careful, son. The devil doesn't always wear red. Sometimes she sings on the choir.
Steve said nothing. But in his mind, the warning only made Amanda more unforgettable. By Wednesday night's service, whispers were everywhere. Amanda pretended not to notice, but every amen
felt like accusation. And when she looked up to lead the final hymn, Steve was there again, arms folded, eyes locked on her. The song on her lips faltered, and in that moment, the scandal truly began. As the hymn ended, Steve didn't move. He waited until everyone bowed their heads in prayer, then walked straight down the center aisle, his footsteps echoing louder than the instruments. When he reached Amanda, he leaned close enough for her to hear over the music.
Next time, Amanda, don't sing for them, sing for me.
Amanda's heart stopped. Every pair of eyes lifted from prayer, sensing something they couldn't see. Pastor Grant froze mid-sentence at the pulpit as his son turned and walked out the door, leaving a trail of whispers in his wake. By the time Amanda found her voice again, the scandal had already begun to right itself. Pastor Grant reached home 2 hours later, still burning from embarrassment. Every step he took across the veranda sounded like judgment. He had preached for 25 years without scandal, and now his own son had turned his ministry into a rumor. Behind his closed door, he prayed aloud for patience, but clenched his fists between every amen. Steve waited until midnight to slip into his room. He couldn't bear another lecture from his father. What started as teasing had become something heavier, something he didn't yet understand, but it carried Amanda's name. The next afternoon the rain returned, soft but steady. Then it stopped. Amanda was locking the choir room when she saw Steve leaning against the gate, head down. She wished there was another way out to avoid him, but she had no choice but to walk past him.
Before you cuss me out, I came to say sorry.
His voice was low, stripped of the swagger that usually annoyed her. He told her he hadn't meant to embarrass her or his father, and that the whisper in her ears yesterday wasn't a stunt. Amanda looked away, pretending she wasn't listening to him. When she finally met his eyes, words deserted both of them. The space between them felt charged, half apology, half temptation. Steve stepped closer, but Amanda turned, pretending to fix a button on her blouse. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. She whispered,
Steve, I think you should go.
He nodded, but neither of them moved. Steve slowly leaned in. As his lips almost met Amanda's, a heavy thunder cracked. Only then did she walk off, heart unsteady. By the time she reached home, she texted Trudy everything.
He came to say sorry and almost kissed me. And surprisingly, I really wanted to do it. He must be the devil from hell, trying to test my faith.
Trudy stared at the message, her stomach twisting. She had wanted Steve's attention from the moment he arrived. Instead of replying, she opened a new chat.
Hey, stranger.
She typed to Steve,
Feel for a drink later? And don't worry, I'll pay.
Steve hesitated only a moment before agreeing. It was easier to drown confusion than face it. He'd rather avoid thinking about his feelings by drinking and pretending everything's fine than admit to himself that he's falling for Amanda. Later that night, Trudy and Steve met at a late-night cafe in the next district. Trudy looked radiant, her smile sharp as a blade. Steve laughed at her jokes, but everything reminded him of Amanda. When Trudy leaned closer, he realized he couldn't feel a thing. For the first time, he knew exactly who he wanted. And she wasn't sitting across from him. He found an excuse to leave and then dropped Trudy home. On his way, he wondered if what he felt for Amanda was love or obsession. Little did he know that the answer would present itself in a few weeks. For Amanda, there was no need to question if she was in love or not. She was in love with Steve Grant. She had promised herself not to fall in love with anyone before she finished her studies. She tried to lose herself in choir practice, but every note carried Steve's voice in her memory. She told herself it was foolishness, yet her heartbeat refused to listen. But Sunday morning, before service began, The gossip reached her ears.
Did you hear that Pastor's son and Miss Trudy was out drinking Friday night?
Sister Myra asked Amanda. Laughter rippled through the pews. The attention that once pressed on Amanda suddenly shifted toward Trudy. But it didn't bring relief to Amanda. It burned instead. Amanda didn't sit beside Trudy. She sat alone. When Steve entered, Amanda kept her eyes on her songbook. She felt betrayed. Pastor Grant, already aware of the talk, summoned his son after the benediction.
This ends now. You're turning my ministry into mockery, and if you bring one more shadow over my ministry, I'll send you back to Kingston,
said Pastor Grant. Steve bit his tongue, but his jaw tightened. The warning rang in his head all week. Amanda avoided him, claiming extra choir duties. The distance only deepened the ache between them. By the time that the church's anniversary service arrived, they hadn't spoken in days. The celebration stretched into evening. Music, laughter, testimonies. When the crowd finally thinned, Amanda stayed back to tidy the altar and pews. Steve appeared with a broom and a quiet smile.
Figured you could use some help.
She should have walked away. Instead, she stayed. He explained, and she forgave him. Words slipped easily again. Jokes about the choir, confessions about pressure, laughter that softened into silence. When she turned to thank him, he was close enough for her to feel his breath. Her heart raced, confusion mixing with desire and fear. Then, the world outside the church vanished, leaving just two souls who couldn't control their desires. Then his hand brushed hers, and she didn't pull away. They shared an intimate moment before Amanda came back to her senses. But what they didn't thought anyone else saw except God was streaming live. They didn't notice the small red light blinking above the pulpit. The anniversary live stream had never been turned off. While they were locked in that moment, the camera recorded everything, broadcasting it quietly to anyone who hadn't yet left the feed. By sunrise, Mount Zion was no longer a quiet district. It was the center of a storm. Everyone knew. Steve Grant and Amanda Morris had been caught on the church camera. Phone screens lit up across the world as the clip spread like wildfire. People had screen recorded it straight from the church live stream. And before the morning devotion ended, it was everywhere. TikTok, Pinkwall, Instagram, even Facebook. Voices rose in laughter, judgment, and disbelief. The pastor's son? The choir leader? Inside the sanctuary? The captions wrote themselves. Memes, edits, and voiceovers. Even people who didn't know where Mount Zion was now had an opinion about what happened there. By afternoon, the church WhatsApp group was flooded, half calling for discipline, half calling for prayer. Pastor Grant's phone rang non-stop, every call heavier than the last. His heart broke in silence before his anger found words. The man who once stood in the pulpit with pride now stared at his son with a face heavy from sleeplessness.
How could you bring shame into the Lord's house?
His stomach turned. The shame was public now. No sermon could hide it.
Daddy, it's not how it looks.
But it was exactly how it looked to everyone who'd already decided.
Not wanting to hear Steve's explanation, Pastor Grant turned and walked away. Amanda couldn't leave her house. Her mother kept on crying. Her father kept on swearing. The church sisters stopped visiting. Even Trudy, feeling guilty for sparking the drama that led to everything, avoided her. The music in Mount Zion went quiet. No rehearsals, no laughter, just whispers and blame. The following evening, Amanda's parents and her marched up to the Grant home. The sound of their knock cut through the silence like thunder.
Pastor, we don't come to argue,
her mother said, voice trembling.
Our daughter's name has been dragged all over social media. People keep calling her Jezebel. The only way to make this right is if Steve marry her.
Pastor Grant's face fell. He turned to his son.
Steve, I hope you heard that.
But Steve stepped back.
Mary? Daddy, I can't. I'm only 25. I'm not ready to settle down like that.
Amanda's father stared at him in disbelief.
So you shame her and walk away? That's your plan?
Steve's eyes darted to the floor.
I never promised her marriage.
Pastor Grant covered his face, broken between anger and grief. The Morris family left in tears, Amanda's mother shouting that Steve was a wicked boy and Amanda was a foolish girl. That night, Steve packed his bag. Kingston was calling, somewhere big enough to forget Mount Zion. He didn't wait for his father's blessing. He didn't leave a note. For all the talk of love, he realized it was never love at all, just a hunger for something forbidden, something that vanished the moment it became real. Amanda learned he'd gone through a cousin's post on TikTok. She didn't cry at first. She just sat staring at the wall, empty. But the days that followed hollowed her out. Her grades dropped. She stopped singing. She told herself she'd never fall in love again. And just like that, life moved on. 9 days later, new gossip replaced the old one. The clip that had once shocked the world was now just another forgotten story buried under newer scandals. The phones went quiet, but Amanda's heart didn't heal as quickly. She was scarred in silence. Pastor Grant had lost his son. Amanda had lost her joy, and Mount Zion had lost its life. Weeks later, Amanda returned to church for the first time. Heads turned when she walked in, but she kept her chin high. The moment stretched. No one moved. No one breathed. She looked different, tired, but peaceful. Pastor Grant stood at the pulpit, hands trembling over his notes. He hadn't seen her since that night, and every line about forgiveness stung him like a reminder. He looked up mid-sermon, voice low and trembling.
We speak of mercy, yet we cast stones faster than prayers. I have learned that forgiveness is not weakness, it is grace.
The church fell silent. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. He stepped down from the pulpit, crossed to her, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder.
You have stumbled, and so have all of us. But the house of God is for the broken, not the perfect. No one is beyond God's mercy. He forgives you, and we do too. You are welcome, my child.
Murmurs filled the pews, but this time they were softer. The choir began to hum softly behind them, the same hymn Amanda once led. Before everything fell apart, her voice joined theirs, shaky at first, then strong, echoing through the walls like a prayer answered at last. Outside, the same rain that started the whole story began to fall again, washing the dust from the church steps as if the heavens were ready to start over. And for the first time in weeks, Mount Zion felt like home again. In a district where news flashes faster than lightning, they all learned how quickly the world forgets. But Amanda's heart would remember forever. She finished her studies quietly, her faith bruised but not broken. Steve never returned to Mount Zion, and Pastor Grant, who once preached perfection, now teach his congregation about the true meaning of forgiveness. Because in the end, grace doesn't erase the past. It teaches people how to live with it. If you enjoyed this series, show your love by clicking the like button, leave a comment, and share to your friends and families. Thanks for watching. And if you want to watch more amazing tales like these, subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you will be notified when I post another video. Take care until next time.